Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing D-Day by Antony Beevor and why you should read it. I can't wait to talk about this historian today. He's one of my favorite historians of all time, and this just so happens to be one of the first World War II books I ever read, so I can't wait to discuss it with you guys today. This book was first published in 2009. It runs approximately 592 pages long. It is a little thick, but it is an exhaustive scholarly study of D-Day, and it's also entertaining. It's written in a very accessible format, and I find Antony Beevor to be one of the best historians of all time in balancing the rigorous historical study with a narrative quality that makes it easy to read. So if you're looking to read about D-Day, this is the book that I would start with. As always, I'll give you guys a brief summary of what's covered in the book, and then I'll give you guys a list of films and documentaries that I would watch alongside it. I'll give you guys a list of books that I would branch off to after reading D-Day if you're interested in reading more about this subject. But before we get into all of that, I want to give you guys a couple words on the author himself. Antony Beevor stands among the most respected military historians of the modern era. Acclaimed for his unparalleled ability to blend scholarly precision with narrative brilliance. Born in London in 1946, Beevor was educated at Winchester College and later attended the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, where he studied under the legendary military theorist John Keegan. Though he served briefly as an officer of the 11th Hussars, Beevor soon pivoted towards a literary career, finding his true calling in chronicling the vast, intricate, and deeply human dimensions of war. Over the decades, he has earned a reputation for bringing military history out of the archives and into the realm of living memory, rendering it accessible, emotionally resonant, and intellectually rigorous. D-Day, the Battle for Normandy, is a cornerstone of Beevor's legacy. Following the monumental success of Stalingrad, a book that I'll cover shortly, and Berlin, The Downfall, 1945, where those earlier works captured the Eastern Front's brutal sweep, D-Day turns its gaze westward to examine how the most famous amphibious assault in history unfolded, not merely as a strategic operation, but as a crucible of human endurance, error, sacrifice, and fate. Beevor's work remains indispensable to any serious study of 20th century conflict because he insists on seeing war not as numbers on a map, but as agony written into bodies, landscapes, and minds. So yeah, I hope that gives you guys a better understanding of who Antony Beevor, the historian, is. He's one of the greatest living historians on the planet. I would be so grateful to be able to interview him before he leaves this world. I know he's kind of up there in age, but he's left behind a catalog of works that is, to me, indispensable. I think if you want to study World War II, if you want to study the last century, Antony Beevor is one of those guys to go to. I have a large collection of his books on my shelves, and I've read almost everything he's written. So I'm going to throw up on screen right now kind of his complete bibliography if you guys want to dive deeper into his works. I recommend absolutely everything. Like I just said, I'm kind of sounding redundant here, but I think he's one of the greatest living historians. So now I'm going to give you guys a brief summary of what's actually covered in this book. D-Day, the Battle for Normandy, is not simply the story of June 6, 1944. Antony Beevor crafts a panoramic, visceral, and unsparing account of the months-long struggle that unfolded from the first boots on the beaches to the liberation of Paris. Drawing from a vast array of personal testimonies, military records, and newly declassified intelligence, Beevor immerses readers in the tension and terror of the landing craft, the savage chaos of bow cage fighting, and the moral quagmires faced by soldiers and commanders alike. He paints a portrait of courage and cruelty on all sides, examining not only the Allied triumph, but also the harrowing German resistance, the suffering of French civilians, and the brutal unraveling of Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Through Beevor's masterful prose, Normandy ceases to be a static map of arrows and objectives and becomes a haunted landscape where exhausted men, from generals to privates, wrestle with fate, fear, and the weight of history pressing down upon them. This is a book that transforms our understanding of how victory was won and what its human cost truly was. So yeah, I hope that gives you guys a better sense of what's covered throughout the book. Like I said, it is masterfully done. If you want a book that's rigorous, scholarly, gives you tons of great facts that you can rattle off to your friends later, this is the book for you. But if you also want a book that's narrative, that gets you, riled up and emotional throughout it and makes you feel the fear and terror that the soldiers felt on the day, I think this is the best book for that too. So if you're getting into studying D-Day, this is the book that I would start with. Now, I'm going to give you guys a couple documentaries that I would also branch off to while reading this book. Sometimes it helps to have a little bit of a visual guide throughout it, and I love watching World War II documentaries. I've watched probably hundreds throughout my life, but there are thousands out there, so I'm not going to give you guys an exhaustive list. Maybe one day I'll make a list of my top 50 or top 100 favorite World War II documentaries. I've already made a list of my top 50 favorite World War II films, so if you guys want to go check that video out, you guys can, but I haven't gotten around to making my favorite documentaries list just yet. But here are a couple that I would recommend. One of which is from, I believe, 1994 or 1995. I'm not certain on the date there, but it's a PBS documentary on D-Day, and it's probably the best D-Day documentary I've ever seen in my life. If you guys can go find that one's fantastic. PBS tends to put out some of the best war documentaries ever made, especially when it's Ken Burns at the helm. His Vietnam War, his World War II, his Civil War documentaries are all phenomenal, some of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life. I don't believe he did the D-Day one, but the D-Day one by PBS is fantastic. There's also one by BBC that came out last year in 2024 about D-Day. It's also fantastic. I believe that one's on YouTube. I'm not 100% sure, but BBC recently put out a D-Day documentary that is also fantastic. But at some point in the future, I'll provide you guys with a more exhaustive list of the greatest World War II documentaries I've ever seen in my life. Some are better than others. Some are free on YouTube, and you can kind of just throw them casually in the background. Others, like The World at War from 1973, are just so masterfully done. You kind of want to sit down and pay attention to them, even though it's like a 30-episode long series. That's probably one of the greatest ones of all time. So if you haven't gone and check out The World at War, narrated by, I believe, Laurence Olivier, can't get any better than that. That one's also fantastic, and that one I know for a fact is free on YouTube. So I'll wrap up with documentaries there and move on to a couple films that I'll recommend. So the first of which is pretty obvious because it has the most visceral D-Day depiction basically ever. The veterans who went and saw this film for the first time when it was just coming out said that they had PTSD-like experiences watching it. A lot of them threw up, had to leave the theater. They left crying. It was just so visceral and so real. And of course, I'm talking about 1998's Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, that opening scene where they're landing on the beach, I think that one is specifically Omaha Beach. It is... It's not for the faint of heart. If you've never seen Saving Private Ryan before, it is quite a gory movie, especially that opening scene. But if you want to feel what it was like to land on those beaches, that's the most accurate depiction I think I've ever seen put on screen. There are little moments that Steven Spielberg puts into that scene that are straight out of this book, and they might not even seem like it. Some of you who have seen the movie, I'm not spoiling too much here, may remember that when they're landing on the beach, one particular soldier loses his arm. He looks down kind of around him in confusion, picks up his arm, and he keeps walking forward. Now, that may seem like something that Steven Spielberg made up to make the film feel more violent or whatever, but that's actually described in this book. I believe it's this book. It's actually described. That actually happened. That actually happened to a soldier, and that little bit of information Steven Spielberg came across and he put it in his film and it made the film more real. It's just little things like that. He had so much attention to detail, getting the uniforms right, getting basically everything correct. I know some military historians have broken down the D-Day invasion scene and went, oh, this isn't quite right, this isn't quite right. You'll always be able to nitpick history films like that. I'm not like that. I'll sit down and enjoy it for what it is. We can nitpick films all day long, but the accuracy in which Steven Spielberg presented the D-Day invasion was just, it hasn't been paralleled since. So Saving Private Ryan is my number one pick for film recommendations. The next one is actually a pretty overlooked film. It's underrated, unless you're in your 70s. A lot of people haven't seen this film. It's from 1962, and it's called The Longest Day. It's based off of a book by Cornelius Ryan called The Longest Day, which I'll also recommend in a second here. The Longest Day to me is fantastic, and prior to Saving Private Ryan coming out, The Longest Day probably had the best depiction of a D-Day landing. It also stars John Wayne, who I think is fantastic. I love his acting, and it's just a great World War II film that not enough people have seen. So if you can go out and find The Longest Day, maybe you can find it on YouTube, I'm not too sure, but if you can go find it on some website somewhere, I know not a lot of streaming services are providing The Longest Day, unfortunately, but it's a fantastic film. Go out and watch it, and if you're interested in the D-Day invasion, that was kind of the first film to depict it. So moving on from that, I have one other, well, this isn't a film, this is a mini-series, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can guess it because it might be the greatest piece of fictionalized World War II content to ever be produced. It was produced in 2001 by HBO. It's a mini-series, and it's, of course, Band of Brothers. It is fantastic, and it does cover the D-Day invasion, but from a different perspective. I believe it's episode 2, and it covers the paratroopers' perspective of D-Day. Now, you also get some flashes of the beach landings and stuff like that, but for the main part, you're covering Easy Company that lands behind enemy lines, paratrooping down the night before the D-Day invasion, and kind of their journey all throughout Operation Overlord as they kind of take over Paris. So in episode, 2 to I think 10, I don't know if there's 10 episodes or 8, but the rest of the series is kind of covering the entire taking of France, and it's just a fantastic series. There's so many great actors in it. So many great actors got their start in Band of Brothers. And it's just well acted, well directed, well produced. The cinematography is phenomenal, and the scale of the battles is intense. It's huge. It's an HBO miniseries, so they spared no expense in making these battles huge and immersive. So if you've never sat down and watched Band of Brothers, I can't stress it enough. It is the same quality of Saving Private Ryan, if not a little bit better. Like, it's seriously that good. So yeah, it's a phenomenal series. I think everybody should go check it out. Next up, I want to give you guys a few recommended books. The first of which is Rick Atkinson's The Guns at Last Light. It's a phenomenal read, but it's also a part of a trilogy, so I highly recommend reading the whole trilogy. Rick Atkinson is one of the best modern World War II historians. He's absolutely phenomenal. I highly recommend The Guns at Last Light. The next one I actually own. It's by another fantastic military historian, Max Hastings. This one's a little bit dated, but it's still fantastic. It's Overlord. It covers all of Operation Overlord, so the entire retaking of France. If you're interested in that, going a little bit past D-Day, this is a fantastic book as well. I highly recommend everyone reading this one. It's kind of a classic in World War II history. And the next one that I'll recommend, I kind of briefly mentioned earlier. I don't own it. I have A Bridge Too Far, but I don't have Cornelius Ryan's The Longest Day just yet. I still need to pick that one up for myself, but I have read it. It is fantastic. Like I said, the movie adaptation in 1962 was also phenomenal. I love John Wayne in that movie. He's so good in it. And yeah, Cornelius Ryan's The Longest Day is also kind of a classic World War II history book. And the last one that I'll mention today is this one. It's Juno Beach by Mark Zuccoli. It's a difficult last name. I'm sorry for butchering it. But Juno Beach. The reason why I like this one is because I'm Canadian, and Juno Beach was actually the most successful beach landing on D-Day. You could debate that, I guess. Omaha was the most difficult beach to take, but Juno Beach was the one that the Canadians landed on. We only lost, I think, 390 men, so fairly low casualties on that beach, and we pushed further inland than any other beachhead. So the Canadians pushed further inland than anybody else. It's something to be proud of. It's probably our most famous military achievement, I would say second to Vimy Ridge. Nothing really tops Vimy Ridge and what the Canadians did in World War I. But Juno Beach, learning a little bit more about the Canadian side is very interesting to me. So if you're Canadian out there, you might want to pick this book up, or if you're just interested in learning more about World or D-Day, this might be a book for you too. So that's one that I picked up, again, just because I'm Canadian. So lastly, I want to give you guys not some of my favorite quotes from the book. Usually I will do that. Usually I'll give you guys my favorite quotes from the book, but because this is a work of nonfiction today, I think a better thing to do is provide you guys with some of my favorite facts. Now, these aren't my favorite facts in that I like that they exist. They're my favorite facts in that they illuminate the scope and magnitude of the battle the most for me. So the first few facts that I'm going to provide you guys are kind of facts that, again, illuminate the scale of the battle. The D-Day invasion, as many of you guys know, is the largest amphibious landing in military history. We've never seen this many boats rush to a shore and invade another country on this scale. It's never happened before. It's the largest amphibious invasion ever. And here are some numbers to kind of flesh out the scale for you guys. So over 156,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 6. Around 7,000 ships and landing craft took part. Nearly 11,000 aircraft supported the invasion, and the Allied troops dropped over 13,000 paratroopers behind enemy lines before dawn. So again, that's what Band of Brothers covers. It covers Easy Company, which was one of the paratrooping groups that landed behind enemy lines just before the boats kind of rushed to the shore. So interesting stuff. A little over 23,000 airborne troops in total were involved, and the invasion fleet stretched 50 miles across the English Channel. The 5 beaches points to you if you can name them off the top of your head. There's Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword. So those were the 5 beaches that we landed on D-Day. Now I should also mention that D-Day isn't the name of the operation of the landings. The landings themselves was called Operation Neptune. Now, Operation Overlord was the name given to the operation of retaking France. So, a little bit of fun facts for you guys there. D-Day was a name given after the invasion. Going into the invasion, it was called Operation Neptune. That's what the landings were called. So I'm sure quite a few of you guys know that D-Day was actually postponed a day. It was supposed to happen on June 5th, but due to bad weather, they had to move it to June 6th. This kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in the German plans. Now, Erwin Rommel was supposed to be the general providing the defense against the invasion, but he was in Germany celebrating his wife's birthday on June 6th, so he wasn't actually on location. And another thing that kind of threw a wrench in things is Hitler wasn't woken up right away. He actually slept through the initial first few hours of the invasion, and then after that, he decided that this was a feint, that this wasn't a real invasion, that the real invasion was going to come later, so he didn't deploy his panzer reserves. So there's a bunch of little things like this that if you read into the nitty-gritty details of D-Day, you can see how this operation could have easily failed. This could have easily not worked out. In fact, I believe it was Eisenhower who had a note tucked in his pocket of an excuse, I guess, he was going to give if the invasion failed. It was tucked into his wallet, and he never ended up having to use it, but even the generals commanding the Allied side thought, this might not work out. I believe the estimate was that 75% of the paratroopers that were going to land were going to die within the initial day. So the scale of this and the likelihood that it was going to succeed, it wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't like the Allies were like, yeah, we got a solid plan here. This is 100% going to work out. This was a difficult operation. And it's almost a miracle that it worked out the way that it did. So there's so many facts that back this up too. I could sit here all day rattling off facts for you guys. I don't want to bore you guys too long, so I'll just give you guys a couple more. Some of you guys may know about the fake inflatable planes and tanks that the British set up to kind of fool the Nazis into where exactly all of their armaments were. But another thing that was interesting that they did was they created fake harbors. They created 2 fake harbors. They're called Mulberry Harbors. And I would really go look this up if you guys can. Go onto some military World War II website and look deeper into the Mulberry Harbors because they're very, very interesting and they're not really talked about when discussing World War II, or discussing D-Day, I should say. But there were these 2 massive harbors that were built, artificial harbors that were carried across the channel and ended up supporting about 2.5 million troops. Very, very interesting stuff. Just the scale of what went on here. They had to invent new boats, actually. The Higgins boat was invented just for the D-Day invasion. And I could go on all day. I don't want to bore you guys because you guys will find out a lot of this stuff from reading the book. But there's just so many interesting facts about the D-Day invasion that just blow my mind and show me that like this operation was not only the largest amphibious operation in military history, like that's one thing, but it was also like the greatest operation ever in military history because of the scale, because of the size, because of all the things that had to be invented, because of the work at Bletchley Park that had to be done to crack the Nazis' Enigma code so that they could even land, so that they could know where the submarines were going to be. Like all of the effort that went into this, millions and millions and millions of people worked on this invasion from back home, making armaments, from the medics. Like so many people worked on this thing and it had to work. If it didn't work, we wouldn't have busted into Europe and it would have been just the Soviets fighting the Germans. And maybe the Germans could have won that. Who knows? The Soviets were throwing millions and millions and millions of men at the Germans. They probably could have done that for a few more years. So who knows if the Germans could have ever beat the Soviets without the distraction of the West. But if we didn't break in, who knows? Who knows? Maybe Germany keeps Europe. Maybe everyone in France is speaking German today. I don't know. You know, it's hard to do that retrograde history of what ifs. You know, it's hard to do that because we'll never know. We only know the history that we live in. But it's interesting to look back on D-Day and just to see how much of a miracle this thing was. Like, it worked. It worked. We got in there and we beat the Nazis, and it shouldn't have worked. There's so many reasons why this plan should have failed. But it's just a testament to human endurance, to human resilience, to the fight for freedom. It's so inspiring. And I got a few more facts for you guys, and then we'll wrap up for today. But I want to highlight the human cost, because this triumph didn't come cheaply. Around 10,000 Allied casualties occurred on D-Day. Of those, approximately 4,400 were killed. The U.S. forces suffered 2,500 deaths, British forces 1,400 deaths, and Canadians lost about 390 men, as I mentioned before. German casualties are estimated at 4,000 to 9,000, and over 20,000 French civilians were killed during the Battle of Normandy. Omaha Beach was the bloodiest, with nearly 2,000 U.S. casualties in a single day. Many soldiers were drowned before even reaching the beaches due to their heavy gear. So yeah, just some more facts there to kind of give you guys a sense of the casualties and the loss. We should remember these men and women often for their great sacrifice. They sacrificed absolutely everything for us to have the freedom that we have today. And I really don't want to fight a battle like this again. We need to remember this. We need to look back on it, and we can never forget it. I feel like it's being a little bit forgotten today, and that's very sad to me. That's why I'm making a video like this. As someone who is French-Canadian, all my family's French. I grew up speaking French. I went to a French school. You know, French heritage has a huge part of my life. There might not be a France today if this invasion failed. It might be a part of Germany today. I don't know. It's hard to go back and do what-if-isms in history. It's always messy, but if this invasion failed, we're looking at a different Europe. And so many people, millions and millions of people, put their lives on the line so that I could have France back, so that maybe I can travel there one day and it's not under Nazi control. You know, it's important to think about. So go out there and read a book like D-Day and ponder this stuff and get it in your mind and tell others to read books like this, because we cannot forget this. We can't forget this. These books are written by brilliant historians like Antony Beevor for a reason, so that we don't repeat these same mistakes one day. So that's why I'm making a video like this, to hopefully spread that out to the world even more. And if I convinced you to go pick up this book today, please come back to this video. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Did you guys have a favorite part of the book? Maybe a favorite story, a little anecdote that moved you? I don't think you're going to spoil anything. This is an event that happened a long time ago now, 80 years ago. So if you guys want to share anything about reading this book in the comments, I love discussing it with you guys. If you guys have already read the book and you want to share something in the comments, I love discussing World War II history. It's one of my favorite topics to study, as you guys could probably tell, and I'll have many more why you should read videos on World War II history books coming in the future. In fact, I'll be covering Stalingrad by Antony Beevor in about a day here, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the absolute world to me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.